Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. In this video I want to talk about my favorite chord ever. So I really do have a favorite chord. I'm not just saying that to try and get YouTube clickbait clicks and stuff like that. I really do have a favorite chord. On this YouTube channel I currently have 5 original songs. 4 out of the 5 songs, each of which are in a different key, they all use this chord. So before I tell you my favorite chord, let me just give you a quick backstory. So I posted a post in the Facebook group, the Zombie Guitar Members Facebook group, which if you're not a member of that, I'll post a link to that below. I made a post in there the other day letting the members know about this new video that was coming up. I said, I have a favorite chord. Can anyone guess what it is? So people started guessing things like B minor, E minor 9, F major 7, things like that. So I gave a hint. I said that it's not a specific chord like that. It's actually a type of chord. So people then started guessing things like diminished, augmented, 7th chords, major 7th chords, power chords, things like that. But no one even came close to guessing the right answer. If someone did come close, I would have told them that they were close, and then someone probably would have guessed it from there. But the reason no one came close is because no one thought in terms of chord function. So what I mean by chord function is things like 1 chord, or 4 chord, or 6 chord, or 2 chord, things like that. So understanding chord function is probably the most important aspect of theory you could know. So if you understand how chords function, it helps immensely in songwriting. It helps you figure out songs by ear super quick. It helps you take songs that you already know how to play in one key and transpose them into another key. You can do that super quick. So understanding chords functions is super, super important. So that's what I really want you to take out of this video. So with that said, my favorite chord is the major 3 chord. All right, that's it, the major 3 chord. So the major 3 chord is a non-diatonic chord. It's an out-of-key chord. I'm going to explain why that is in this lesson. But it's used very often. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how I use the major 3 chord in my own chord progressions. I'm going to show you how it's used in some popular songs. And I'm also going to show you how you can take this chord and you can use it to smoothly modulate between one key and another key, all within the same chord progression. So in any given key signature, you have 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished type of chord. So I'm going to show you how to use this major 3 chord in a couple different key signatures, but let's just start out for the key of C major for now. So in C major, your 1 chord is a C major chord, your 2 chord is a D minor chord, 3 chord is E minor, 4 chord is F major, 5 chord is G major, 6 chord is A minor, 7th chord in the triad form is a B diminished triad. And then back at 1 is your C major chord. So you can see that you have 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, 1 diminished chord that are part of this key. You can also use your circle of fifths, which will group together the 3 major chords and 3 minor chords like so for any given key signature. So in the key signature of C major, these are your 3 major, these are your 3 minor chords. The 3 chord, the chord of focus for this lesson, is always going to be found on the inner circle clockwise position of the circle of fifths. So your 3 chord is right there. So diatonically, it would be the E minor chord. We're going to be making that into an E major chord. So what do I mean by diatonic? First of all, that means that the notes that make up the chord are also part of the overall key scale. That's what diatonic means. So in the key of C major, the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. That's the C major scale. As long as the chords contain only those notes and nothing else, it's a diatonic chord. If there's any other notes used other than those 7 notes, it's considered to be non-diatonic or out of key. So as soon as you take the E minor chord, which contains the notes E, G, and B, and you turn it into an E major chord, which contains the notes E, G sharp, and B, it becomes a non-diatonic chord. That one single note, that note G sharp, that is an out-of-key note. That is not contained in the C major scale, therefore it's an out-of-key chord. So keep in mind you can also make this chord into a dominant 7th chord, because diatonically, when you're using the minor version of the chord, the diatonic chord, which would be an E minor, if you were to make it into its 7th variation, which would have this extra note here, which is the note D, that would be the notes E, G, B, and D. So that's a diatonic chord, the diatonic 7th variation of the chord. If you're making the triad major, so you're making an E major triad, but retaining that same seventh, that note D, it becomes an E7 chord. So you can always play an E7 chord or an E major chord. The E7 chord will just strengthen the sound more. So that'll sound something like this. So let me quickly run through a progression. I made up a chord progression in this key of C major that uses all of these chords, or the 3 major and the 3 minor chords, excluding the diminished chord, but it uses the 3 major, 3 minor chords. And first I'm going to play the progression using an E minor, and then I'm going to use the same progression and I'm going to use an E major. So take a listen to these back to back. So here's the E minor version. That was the E minor version. So now I'm going to take that and I'm going to play the E major in the place of the E minor. So take a listen to that. So hopefully it was apparent that you could hear the difference between the E minor chord and the E major chord. So if it was not apparent, things will become apparent once I start to demonstrate this for other keys. When you're on the guitar and you're playing open chords, certain concepts kind of really pop out when you're using different keys. So even though this major 3 chord can be used in any key, once I demonstrate this for the key of G major, you're going to really see what I'm talking about here. You're really going to see that the minor and the major 3 chords sound significantly different. Alright, so let me demonstrate this chord in the key of G major now. So we were looking in the key of C major now, let's look at the key of G major, because as I said, things become more apparent in this key. So when you're playing open chords on the guitar, certain things just kind of pop out more, certain concepts become just very obvious. So in the key of G major, this concept becomes obvious. So using your circle of fifths, you can see what your in-key chords are. Your 3 major chords and your 3 minor chords for the key of G major are these. So the chord of focus that we're looking at is the 3 chord, which is found in the inner circle clockwise position. That's a B minor chord. So diatonic to the key of G major would be a B minor chord. We're going to take that B minor chord and make that into a B major chord. That's your major 3 chord. You can make that a dominant 7th chord if you want to further strengthen this concept. So a B major chord or B dominant 7th chord, both of those will work as the substitution that we're going for. So the most common pop progression is the 1-5-6-4 progression. And then a very common bridge is the 3-4 progression. So let me just give you that example real quick. So here's the 1-5-6-4. So the sad bridge is the B minor to C major. Taking that B minor, making that into a major chord or a dominant 7th chord, that's no longer a sad bridge. So let's hear the 1-5-6-4 progression followed by the non-sad bridge now. So it eliminates the sadness, all right? So taking that minor chord and making it into a major chord or a dominant 7th chord, it removes that sadness. Alright, so now I just want to talk about how you can use this major 3 chord to smoothly transition into a new key. So this makes a great transitional chord to modulate from one key to another key within the same song or same progression. So you take your minor 3 chord, you make it into a major 3 chord. You can then further strengthen this concept by taking that major 3 chord and then making it into a dominant 7th chord. A dominant 7th chord is a major chord, but it just has that additional note on there, that flat 7 note. That's what makes a dominant 7 chord. So let's go back to the key of C major here, and we're going to go C major. The 3 chord in C major is E minor. We're making that into E major, or an E dominant 7th chord, and that's the chord of focus here. So that E dominant 7th chord is going to be used as a transitional chord. So whenever you have a dominant 7th chord, it has a strong tendency to want to move to a chord that is a 5th below it. So how do you know what a 5th below a chord is? Well, you can always use power chords. That's what I like to do. So power chords are just roots and fifths. So here's a power chord, here's a power chord, all these different power chords. So for example, power chord on the 3rd fret of the low E string is the note G, and then the note D. So G is the root, D is the 5th. All right, so D is the 5th of G. So if I want to figure out what this E dominant 7th chord is the 5th of, I just have to figure out where my note E is on my A string. So it's right there, 7th fret. So that's the 5th. So the root must be there. So that's a power chord. Note A is the root, E is the 5th. So that's how you can tell what the 5th of something is. All right, so I have my E. E dominant 7 is the 5th of what? It's the 5th of A. So it doesn't matter if you want to move to a minor chord or you want to move to a major chord. Dominant 7th chords move to both very nicely. So let's try to take that E dominant 7th chord and then just move it to the A minor and see how that sounds. So I'm going to take that same chord progression that I did before in the beginning. That sounded nice, right? You know, E dominant 7 chord went nicely to the A minor chord, but I didn't really modulate. I stayed in the same key. So everything about that was still in the same key signature because A minor is part of the key of C major. In fact, you know, C major and A minor are a relative major-minor pair. You could say that C major is the major name of this key. You could say that A minor is the minor name of this key. Whatever you want to call it, it still shares the same grouping of chords. Everything about a relative major-minor pair is the same. The only difference is what chord you're treating as the tonal center. So I didn't really do anything there. I didn't modulate keys. Let me do the same thing now and take that E dominant 7th chord, but instead of going to A minor, I'm going to go to A major instead. So let's hear how that sounds. So I just switched up and I played a whole new set of chords there. I was in a completely different key. I was now in the key of A major. But I used that E dominant 7th chord as a transitional chord to allow me to get there. Because E is the 5th of something, E is the 5th of A, so I chose to move to the key of A major. If I were to choose to move to the A minor, I would have remained in the same key signature that I started at, but choosing to take that and move to the key of A major, I transitioned to a completely different key. If I wanted to do the same thing, if I wanted to keep transitioning to another key, I would again take that 3 chord and make it into that dominant 7th variation, and then I could transition into yet another key. So in the key of A major, you have your A major is your 1 chord, B minor is your 2 chord, C sharp minor is your 3 chord. So your 3 chord, you're going to make that major, or you can make that dominant 7. All right, so that's going to be my transitional chord. That's the fifth of what? The fifth of what? So if this is my fifth on the fourth fret of the A string, this is going to be my root, second fret of the low E string. Remember the power chord trick. So that's going to want to move to here. So now let me just play this whole progression, and I'm going to actually make 2 key changes. So you just keep going. But the point is, I'm taking that major 3 chord, or that minor 3 chord, and making it into a major chord, further strengthening it by making it into a dominant 7th chord, which then allows me to transition into another key. And that's just basically how this stuff works. So super awesome chord to modulate from one key to the next. That's another reason why I love this chord. All right, so now for a couple popular song examples. Number 1, you have Radiohead Creep. So that's in the key of E major. So in the key of E major, using your circle of fifths, you can see that the 3 chord is a G sharp minor chord. But right off the bat, they make that into a G sharp major chord. So that's like this. So he also uses another out of key chord there. The E major is the 1, the A major is the 4. So he then makes it an A minor, which is a minor 4 chord, which again is another out of key chord, but that's not the focus of this lesson. The focus of this lesson is on the major 3 chord. So E major to G sharp major, that's that major 3 chord right there. I just want to point out right here that I said in a previous lesson, a couple lessons ago, that usually this chord right here is called an A flat major chord. I didn't mean to say that that was a 100% of the time thing. Usually you're going to see this chord right here referred to as the A flat major chord, the chord that's rooted on the 4th fret. In certain instances it will be called the G sharp major chord, like this instance when you're in a key that normally has a G sharp minor. This is made into a major chord. It's then called a G sharp major chord. So I just wanted to point that out. So if you watched the lesson from a few days ago or from last week and you're wondering, hey, Brian Kelly said that that's supposed to be called an A flat major chord. Usually it's called an A flat major chord, but in this particular instance where you're in a key where it's supposed to be G sharp minor and you're turning it into a G sharp major, in that particular instance, the correct name would then be a G sharp major chord. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you didn't see the previous video, forget this. But if you did see that video and you're thinking I'm saying conflicting information, that's why that is. All right. So E major, G sharp major would be your major 3 chord. Another example is Imagine by John Lennon. So I guess it would be the pre-chorus, or I don't know. There's a couple different parts of that song. So that's that part of the song. You could say I'm a dreamer. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not a singer. Forgive me. But yeah, C major, G major, C major, or F major, G major, C major, E major. So E major would be in the key of C major. That's that major 3 chord. So another example is Space Oddity by David Bowie. So this is another great example in the key of C major. So this song uses both the minor 3 chord for the sadder parts of the song and the major 3 chord for the not so sad parts. the verses. So the song starts out very sad sounding. It's an F major 7 chord, which is diatonic to the key of C major. It then moves to an E minor chord. So the song starts out very, very slow, very sad. So F major 7, diatonic to the key of C, E minor, diatonic to the key of C. Then when it gets to the ground control to major tom part, it's still on a C major chord going to an E minor chord. Still very sad, E minor. But then when it kicks into the verse, this is ground control to major. So see, it's an E major right there. It's all sad again, the sitting in a tin can part. So the sad parts of the song, he's using the E minor. The verse parts of the song, he's using the E major. So take a listen to that song and you'll see what I'm talking about. But that's a really cool example of using both the minor 3 and the major 3. So there's a lot of other examples of songs that use this major 3 chord concept. If you want to check out my originals, again, I'll post some links to those below. Each of the original songs that I did are in a different key, but I made use of this chord in each of those. So if it's in a minor key, if the song's written in a minor key, it doesn't matter. You still use your circle of fifths, inner circle, clockwise position. That's the chord that you're changing. So whether you want to call the key the major name of the key or the minor name of the key, it doesn't matter. Whether you want to call this the major 3 chord, if you're referring to it from the major perspective, or you want to call it the major 5 chord if you're referring to it from the minor perspective, it doesn't matter. I personally like to keep the numbering of the chord progressions consistent and treat everything as if it were a major key. I don't like to have different numbering systems for major keys and minor keys. I explain my reasoning for that in my lesson about the Nashville numbering system versus the Roman numeral numbering system. I explain all that there. I keep my numbering the same, which is why I'm just referring to this as the major 3 chord. All right. If you want to call it the major 5 chord for minor keys, feel free to do it. It does not matter. It's the chord that's on the circle of fifths, inner circle, clockwise position. That's the chord of focus. So I've talked about this in many other lessons before. I will continue to talk about this in future lessons because it's a great chord. Anyway, that's my favorite chord. Thanks for watching. See you next time.